the March edition of the You Already Own It Cloud Office Hours. It is the Ignite 2021 update. I am super excited for this particular talk. The Cloud Strategist team has been working for the last several weeks to sort of help give you the major updates from Microsoft's Ignite 2021. We're sort of going to break this down into two major sections. We're going to talk about the modern workplace stack in general at first. We're going to give updates and then have a roundtable and discuss it a little bit with the cloud strategist about what we think some of the impacts of the major things we just told you about are. Then we're going to shift to the Azure side and talk about Azure dev and data, and then have a second roundtable quickly and sort of key in on some of the key really important topics there, and then we'll go ahead and wrap it up. I will, our goal is to always get these done. Our goal is to always get these done within an hour. But there's a lot of content today, so we're going to go all the way up to the hour, maybe a few minutes past. There's so much to talk about, so I just want to give you fair warning. Obviously, if you can't attend the entire meeting, we will be recording it, and we send as a follow-up the link to the recording if you have to drop before we can get everything in, although we're going to give it our best. So with that, I'll speed up through this intro section here so that we can get to the good stuff. Your You Already Own It team is myself, Bob Ballard, Principal Cloud Strategist, Director of the Cloud Strategy team, along with George Scott, Ken Nubler, Scott Dowling, Miguel Wood, and Noah Sparks, all playing a role in here. Mary Tucker keeps us all in line, make sure we keep our promises, and it's all under the guidance of our Executive Vice President, Steve Winter. Don't forget, as a You Already Own It customer, and those that are invited to this call are all You Already Own It customers, you can email the You Already Own It at go-planet.com alias. Obviously, feel free to reach out to your account teams first if you know, but if you have any questions around anything in general that has to do with your journey to the cloud, feel free to reach out to the You Already Own It alias, and that will take you to all the cloud strategists who will then figure out exactly what needs to happen next. So feel free to leverage that. Next slide, Ken. So a quick agenda, we're going to talk about M365 security, Outlook. There's a bunch of stuff around Outlook. We're going to talk a little bit about Viva, which I think is a really interesting element here. We're going to have Noah talk about that from our organizational change management team. Talk about Teams and Power Platform. And then we're going to get into Azure dev and /data to follow it up. At the back end of each of the core major sides, we're going to have a little bit of a roundtable. So with that, I think you're kicking us off, right, Ken? So why don't you go ahead and get the show going?
Absolutely. So first item on the list today, and we're going to go over these pretty quickly, so get ready. Threat Analytics Microsoft 365 Defender. So what this is it's now available for public preview for Microsoft 365 Defender. This release extends the proactive guidance in the past that was only given out to just Defender for Endpoint. So this is a series of reports that Microsoft security researchers develop. And again, the big thing about this is before it was scoped just to Defender for Endpoint, now it's scoped for the entire Microsoft 365 suite. Next item is passwordless authentication for Azure Active Directory. It's now generally available, and for folks that are using this, you no longer use passwords to sign into a network. Instead, you'd use a look or a tap using Hello for Business, Microsoft Authenticator app, or any other compatible FIDO2 type of authentication security key. And with this, Microsoft has announced TAP, which is Temporary Access Pass, which is a way for you to reset and recover your passwordless credentials. TAP stands for Temporary Access Pass, so that'll be coming up here soon. One really cool thing that I think is coming up is AWS SSO for Azure Active Directory. Lots of acronyms there, but basically, this is an Azure service that simplifies the single sign-on integration with Amazon Web Services. This is huge, right? So now you can still use that Office 365 credential not only for your 365 workloads, your Azure workloads, but now actually extending that right into Amazon Web Services. So this is a big announcement, and we're very excited about this. So the whole idea there with Microsoft is to control that credential and use that for single sign-on for all your applications. So it supports that strategy. DLP on premises. This is another strategy type of thing where Microsoft is now has the ability to not only control your DLP in the cloud, but also control the DLP across some of your local file shares, your SharePoint servers, your old 2016 SharePoint servers on-prem as well. So once you come up with that strategy up in the cloud, you can now bring that down on-premise and be able to use that on-premise. If you're still holding on to ADFS, this one's for you. So with ADFS Activity and Insights Report, it lets customers identify which applications are capable of being upgraded to Azure AD. In the past, it was really hard to make that switch, and there had to be a lot of assessment. But this capability now assesses all ADFS applications for compatibility with Azure AD. It checks for any issues and gives guidance on preparing individual applications for migration to Azure AD. Why this is important is if you're trying to use AD and single sign-on, again, that big strategy thing of using that for single sign-on for all your applications across your environment. Moving forward to Outlook, there's really only two things that they've announced so far. Board View, which is Microsoft is adding a free-form view. It's a new view inside of the traditional grid view for calendar. This calendar view provides a customizable visual tool for ongoing and managing calendars, files, reminders, and to-do lists all in one place. So it's one more extra view for you to be able to manage your daily activities. I think you'll find it pretty helpful. Couple things. It's kind of like a dashboard, and it's available from the calendar views drop-down menu only in OI today, and it's only available currently in commercial and EDU. We do not have a timeline yet on government. Next item is suggested times in Outlook. So this is for Outlook iOS and Android users, and it uses AI, artificial intelligence, in a format optimized for the actual mobile device screen. And Outlook Mobile will use that AI to understand the meeting owner's commitments, priorities, preferences, and suggest times to meet when attendees are free, even if the organizer is not. Now you'd say, why would you do that? Well, maybe you blocked off time on your calendar that's focus time or something like that. So it's going to surface that in a format that's visually acceptable on the phone, to be able to actually suggest times and make it a little bit easier to schedule on the road. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Noah to talk about Viva and about the new employee experience platform. Noah?
Excellent. Thank you, Ken. Viva was a kind of a surprise to many of us, and the employee experience market is more or less saturated, but what gives Microsoft an advantage here is the combination of several of the acquisitions that they've made coming together in a real powerful combination. So if you think of their acquisition of LinkedIn, now they have LinkedIn Learning, right? They also acquired Glint, this survey tool to keep a pulse on your people. It's going to give us real insights into how the policies we implement around remote learning or remote work, and how those play out in the passive continuous behavioral data that we have in Outlook, meetings and times that we're connecting and collaborating with one another. So this is a huge entry into a market that is purpose-built for employee engagement and employee experience. So if we look at connections, it's kind of the supercharged intranet is maybe how I would label it. It's the best of SharePoint and Yammer coming together to ensure that we have a diverse and inclusive workforce experience for employees. If we look at learning, it's the phrase right now, catchphrase is in the flow of work. So right within Teams, managers will be able to surface key learning experiences right in the flow of work. Insights is all around well-being and reminding us to take a breath and to carve out some focus time and really hone in on workplace analytics. Maybe the policies that we have in place are burning our people out, and we need to know that sooner rather than later. And then the topics portion of Viva really centers on syntax, the investments in AI and surfacing knowledge and expertise in really compelling ways that advance our projects. So very excited to see what Microsoft has assembled here.
All right, thanks, Noah. I appreciate that. Okay, buckle up your seatbelts. We got lots of things to talk about with Teams. I got about 13 items, and I'll start out real quickly with one of my favorites that I'm very excited about. The new Teams Connect shared channels. If you haven't heard about this, you're going to love this. Have you ever tried to join a chat session in another partner's tenant, and then you realize how difficult and cumbersome it is to get there? Well, with shared channels, users can add individuals to a single channel rather than the entire team, which is the way it's always been. Each shared channel will appear then within the user's primary Teams tenant alongside existing teams and channels, providing convenient access within their current flow of work. So you never have to leave your tenant again if you're working with external partners. This is really cool. This is due out about second half of the year, so we don't have too much yet to talk about, but at least the understanding and the idea of it is great. But until then, if you need to go, obviously, and change tenants, you got to still go to Office 365 on the web to switch your Teams tenants and do it manually. So very much looking forward to that one. That one's got a lot of noise about it, and people are very excited about it, and I'm definitely excited about it. PowerPoint Live is the next item. Think of this as your presenter view for Teams, right? So if you've ever used presenter view with PowerPoint Live, you can see the notes, you can hand off live co-presenters and see participants while sharing. Uploading the presentation then helps with animations and transitions, and accessibility mode with high contrast is coming new with presenter PowerPoint Live. I think this is going to be very helpful, specifically for single monitor users. Next up, presenter mode. Microsoft is offering 3 new ways to lay out your video over the top of your slides. So with presenter mode, you'll have standout, which is putting your video right on top of the slide as a silhouette, and then there'll be side by side, just as it is, side by side, and then there'll be reporter, which is over your shoulder, like you'd see on a news broadcast. Dynamic view is up next. With dynamic view, Teams will turn the focus on your video if you start to speak or change layout or join a conference. So this is kind of like a voice activated type of thing. If you're familiar with old legacy video conferencing days, I know some of you out there probably are, think of this as voice activated video switching, but on steroids, since it does more than just move around your video, it'll move around the entire conference attributes that you're working with as well. So we're pretty excited about that one. Endpoint transfer, extremely handy to switch between your laptop to phone, phone to laptop in case you're on the go. I've already used this. It seemed like it was working for a while and then it disappeared, but this is due out very soon. This is a way to walk up, if you're on the go and you're on your phone and you get back to your office, you can easily transfer it with no delay, and there's no echo between the switch between your phone to your PC or PC to phone. So it's definitely handy and something to look forward to. Low data mode. So this is about setting the depending on the type of network you're on, right? So this is for the folks that don't have unlimited data, or if you know you're going to be on a slow network, low data mode will definitely be something people want to look at. Disable attendee video. So think of this as your hard mute for video. So for presenters and moderators of a meeting, this will be very helpful, specifically in these new webinar capabilities we're going to talk about coming up on large conferences. So there's no unexpected distractions. You can just like you can hard mute the entire list of participants, you can hard mute the video as well. End-to-end encryption for Teams calls. So this will be available to commercial customers in preview first half of this year. And then this first half of the year, customers will have the ability to enable end-to-end encryption for one-to-one only unscheduled Teams calls. So this provides an end-to-end encryption service. Again, it is only for ad hoc services. They are looking at supporting scheduled calls and online meetings moving forward. Now remember, Teams, everything in transit and at rest is encrypted, but this is for the calling part of Teams itself. So that's the difference there. Invite-only meeting options. If you're invited directly to the meeting, you get a bypass to the lobby, right? This is another security measure that they're putting in. But if a meeting is forwarded to you, then you have to check in with the lobby. So that capability is going to be adding an extra layer of security for invite-only meeting options. Updated mobile app. So a couple things here. Mostly it's all cosmetic, but there's going to be a new user interface for the mobile Outlook app and the mobile apps. In Teams are going to be available, and files in Teams are going to be available offline mode, which is going to be very handy. That's never been available. If your device is set for dark mode, then Teams will see it and set it to dark mode as well. And as usual, this comes first to iOS, and Android will follow soon after. Again, for these large webinars, live reactions are coming. So if you've ever been inside one of these Microsoft webinars lately, you might have seen this already, where people are giving, hearts and thumbs up and clapping real-time feedback for participants and presenters. This is coming to Teams. We talked a little bit about webinar. So this is a big announcement here. Webinar we've been talking about this since, that sounds like since last fall at last Ignite, but support for up to 1,000 participants is there, fully interactive with the ability to immediately scale up to 10,000 with no delay. And that's coming. And the big part here is that the registration part and the downloading of attendees is going to be coming in April. So we're pretty excited about that. Later on, and they don't haven't given a date yet, but we're going to see a meeting recap to the attendee participant right there in Teams. So it can all summarize, the average length of viewing time, and all the details, as well as the ability to download all that content for the meeting stats. For webinar viewer only options, they kick off at over 1,000 users to 10,000, like I mentioned, and that's included in your licensing now. And they said up to 20,000 is available for free right now until December 31st. After December 31st, there's going to be a premium license for going up to 20,000, between 10 and 20,000 users in a team meeting. That's a pretty big deal. So if you've been thinking about doing town halls or something like that, that's kind of what they're looking at. Marketing webinars and Dynamics will be available later this year. Teams and Microsoft Dynamics 365 are now being designed to merge collaboration and business processes together in Dynamics. So now users can leverage Teams from within their Dynamics 365 workspace for calls, to start and continue chats, hold meetings, collaborate, all without having to switch over to Teams. And then on the flip side, users can now access and share their Dynamics content from within Teams without having to switch over to Dynamics. So fully integratable Dynamics and Teams business processes is what it's all about. Let me change the slide, hold on. So let's talk about the Power Platform. Power Automate Desktop. This is the, people have heard about RPA. This is the ability to record actions and repeatable tasks that you do every day on your desktop. So it's kind of like the Power Automate for the desktop itself. And it's going to be included in Windows 10. It actually already is included in Windows 10. It's been available since March 2nd. So if you're interested in doing some of this and automating some of your local tasks on your desktop, take a look at this. I believe there's a download available in the book of, in the document we sent out before this meeting. So you can actually go ahead and grab the desktop application there for Power Automate Desktop. This is a big one here, Power BI Premium Next Gen 2, now in preview. So this is something you're going to want to pay attention to if you've always wanted to get involved in premium but didn't want to bear that upfront cost of $5,000 per month as the minimum for premium features. This lets you get in at the base level, right? So this includes architectural updates for across the board improvements to performance, stability, security, and licensing flexibility. So let's talk about what that means. In the past, if you wanted premium, again, you had to lock in at a high price of at least $5,000. Now, moving forward, it's going to be more about cost and scalability, right? So it's based on how you want to set it up, and it'll be based on capacity and performance moving forward. From the user license standpoint, you can now do a per user license of about $20 per month, and that's available after April 2nd to start purchasing. If you're a Power Pro user right now, you can upgrade for $10 to get to the premium per user licensing. And if you want to try it out right now for free, you can certainly go to your Power BI desktop application, and up in the upper right corner, there's the 3 dots. You can check out the Power BI premium per user access there for preview right now for free. I'm not sure how long it's going to be available for free, but it is available right now. So on the performance and capacity side, there's a 16% performance boost on the architecture now supporting premium, and it's now available for auto scale. So, as your needs grow, it automatically scales as well. And coming soon, which are not available there yet, but there's going to be some new cost management tools and utilization metrics to help you manage those costs for premium. In other words, again, just to summarize, not locked into those levels of node pricing that you saw in the past to get into the entry level of premium. Power FX. So this is pretty cool, and this is Microsoft drawing the line in the sand and saying Power FX will be used as the language to develop a standard across the entire Power platform. So it's going to be the language to develop. It's currently being used right now to develop Canvas apps and Microsoft Power Apps, but Power FX will eventually become the consistent language across the entire Power platform. So it leverages knowledge from Excel functions to help citizen developers get started. And they did that so that they're really starting to bridge Excel and Power BI together. And there's lots more discussion on that topic. This announcement's really about standardizing the new programming language across the entire Power platform. It'll start obviously with Power Apps, but it'll eventually go into virtual agents, Dataverse, Power BI as well. New governance and security in Power Platform. A key aspect for admins to securely deploy and support the platform is the ability to manage and secure the business impact across the entire tenant. So you got to be able to see what people are doing in the Power Platform. And if you haven't done it already, I always put a plug in for this. The Center of Excellence is a great place to start. It provides a governance framework around Power Platform. And Microsoft is announcing more and more controls about this, like tenant-wide reports. That's being built into the Power Platform Admin Center. So that'll be coming out soon. And then from a security perspective, the big news was really about the granularity of connector control over connectors. So in the past, when you were setting up security for Power Platform, for connectors specifically, they were either business or non-business on an environment basis. And now what the big deal is you can actually now control the permissions at the connector level, which is very cool. So for example, if you're going to do a connector with Twitter, for example, you may want read-only access on that connector, but not write access on that connector, as an example. And with that, there's a couple other Power Platform things, but I've got a link. I'll put it into the window for you to read up more on the Power Platform governance items. It's definitely something that I'm into. I'll be writing a blog in the next couple of months about Power Platform governance and where it is today and the controls that you can be putting in place. So be on the lookout for that. And I'll go ahead and throw a link into the window. And that was a lot of news. So let's slow the pace down, get a little bit more informal, and I'll turn it over to Bob for the next discussion about the roundtable.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we switch into the roundtable, Ken, I just wanted to say there was a question, and I think I answered it correctly, but I just wanted to check in with you that the board view didn't. I thought I heard you say the board view was actually available in Outlook in OWA in Outlook web app as
That is correct.
only today, right?
Commercial and EDU, yes.
Yeah, for now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's coming to more, but it's actually going to come to OWA first and then maybe potentially the desktop. Yep.
Yes, absolutely. I haven't heard about when the desktop will be, but that's what we're being told. Yeah. And if you don't see it yet, these things take a while to roll out. So, check back in another week.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. So we're sort of gonna what I thought we would do here is assemble the Cloud Strategist team who have been diligently eyeball deep in all of this to help to put this briefing together. Ken did a fantastic job of rolling through a lot of content really quickly, but it was the whole team assembling that content together. So I thought I'd reassemble them and sort of talk about how we think whether we had any additional questions to sort of throw out there, and then, but also, talk about what we think is important and why coming out of that to sort of bring it one level closer to you, right? So before I get kicked off with because there's a lot of really important stuff, I did want to add one thing to the list that I thought was maybe the coolest thing that happened at Ignite. But also, I think it gives us some insight as to where the world of sort of the web conference immersive meeting experience is going with Microsoft. So if you haven't seen it yet, go out to Bing or Google and Bing the mesh demo from Ignite, because if you haven't seen it, it is possibly, as anybody who's a technologist, one of the coolest things you'll ever see, which talks about the immersive hologram style meeting experience that's built on the Microsoft platform. So it's all theoretical at this point. It's not a product you can buy, all of those kinds of things. To this point, I want to put that caveat in. So besides just being a technologist and thinking that whole experience was cool, almost looks like a sci-fi movie on some level, why I think it's important is Microsoft's game here on the meeting experience is not, hey, I want to have a better meeting platform than WebEx or Zoom. I think Microsoft's goal on this meeting platform is 5 steps beyond that.
Yeah.
Right. So I just wanted to highlight that, to take a peek at that. That's where they want to go. And this is all just a demo of what can be possible, et cetera. But as we look forward, that's the bar they're shooting for, right? Not just an extra box or widget on the Teams client or any of those things. That's the box they're shooting for, and that's the horse you're betting on. And so I just thought I wanted to take a couple seconds and talk about that. I had a couple of things that pop into my mind, and then obviously everybody on the rest of the team speak up. Um, Matt and Evans, I think you're on, or anybody else, for instance, on the team, if they're not on. I was really curious on your thoughts, since Matt, you work with some of our, obviously most compliance restricted and highly secure customers. What your thoughts were on passwordless login? Because to me, I feel like that's huge.
Yeah, it really is. You read my mind. I anybody who's heard me do any talks on You Already Own It or over in the DIB space knows I have a big passion around identity and identity security, and identity as a perimeter. And I think the advent of multiple ways to do passwordless sign-in now, not only it's been in commercial and EDU for a couple of years now, but it's now finally made its way into GCC and GCC High. And what really I think the takeaway is users and passwords are always a pain. They have been since we've been in existence in IT. And so if we can utilize some of these new ways of sign-in, one, we make that experience more seamless for the user. In other words, they can just get a push notification to their managed mobile device, Face ID or Touch ID into that, and then that will get them signed in. And not only are we, making it easier for them, but we're also eliminating the use of a password for them. And why this is important is because we know that passwords are pretty much we can make our password policies as strong as we want, but we all know that users use their same passwords across different services, not only in the business, but also in their personal life. And so when you've got hundreds of millions of passwords out on the dark web that are constantly being harvested and then sold, the password's only as strong as wherever it's being used. And so if it's being used in some, consumer service and that gets harvested, then that there's going to be attacks against a lot of organizations with password spray attacks. And so by having passwordless sign-in, it's just another tool in the toolbox. Of course, we want to have conditional access regardless, right, for, MFA, et cetera. But passwordless sign-in makes that experience even better. So I encourage you, this is something you can enable on a per user basis. You can actually scope it to a group. And so I would encourage you, if you've not experienced it, go to your tenant, get a group created if you don't have a testing group already, and for some test users, and just see what that experience is like, because it does change it quite a bit.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. I had another one for Noah. Noah, on the Viva stuff, I sort of have 2 questions, if you don't mind. So the first question is, so what does it mean for customers in the short term and medium term for Viva, right? So I saw a lot of these announcements, and I think they're really interesting. I think you did a good job of talking about what these pieces or parts are. But number one, what does that mean today? And then the second part of that question is, like, many of our customers have been really successful with the Evolve 365 platform that we have to offer. Where does that fit into all of this as well?
Yeah, I want to give a nod to passwordless. I welcome that future myself completely. And so if we look at short term and long term on Viva, I believe Connections is launching next month. So that should be an experience that you will see in Teams desktop, as well as other entry points. And I want to say Topics is available as well. I've heard some rumblings that it takes quite a bit of data, of files, like upwards of 100,000 files. to get that machine learning to generate some compelling experiences around, looking up an acronym or really exposing the topics and producing more or less a Wikipedia type experience where it's bringing relevant conversations, documents, people, expertise together in a single view that then can be curated. So I would look to those in the short term. Insights is going to be a little ways out. I think there are some initial experiences around well-being, right? And they've partnered with Headspace so that you have a virtual commute and you can decompress from work. And I don't know when that is available. I don't remember seeing any time frame for that one. And learning. So if we turn our attention to learning, the Holy Grail is really not so much in the assignment of a learning experience, but actually being incredibly relevant and timely, right? And that learning is just going to be something that is pervasive. I love that it's given top level billing in Viva. It puts the proper emphasis on always staying on our toes and not thinking that knowledge is a shorter half-life than ever before, right? It's just continuing to decrease. I mean, I'm preparing to facilitate some stuff on Teams, and stuff moved, right? The icons look different. They're not in the same place. So Evolve will continue to be an evergreen content delivery service. So think about leveraging that through the app that is going to be front and center of all of your users in Teams. And Evolve will certainly be a content provider in that experience and always be evergreen. That is such a hard challenge to nail, but we do exceptionally well with that.
That's awesome. Thank you. That's pretty powerful. Thanks, Noah. So we got about 2 minutes before I want to shift to the next section, Ken. But for those that there's a lot of newer folks to the call. We've been doing these calls for a long time. But there's a lot of newer folks to the call. You may or might not know Ken's nickname here on the Cloud Strategist team is Mr. Team. He is all things teams. So there's a couple of things, Ken, that I'd love your thoughts on. So you breezed over, and I think you and I, because of how many teams external to us, sort of immediately grasp where you're going with it. But a little more context on why just slow down for a second, a little more context on why the whole shared channels thing is super important, because I think it's one of the clunkiest elements of Teams currently that gets resolved. And then just for your own side, like if there's one other thing you want to champion before we move on to the next section for a second, throw that out.
Okay. Well, yeah, I mentioned this briefly, but the working with partners the whole point of what Microsoft's trying to do is make you more productive. And if switching between working with a partner, it's too distracted, right? So you need to make that more seamless. So Microsoft is finally addressing that by keeping you by using external invites and B2B as your business to business. So it's keeping us all on our own tenants so that we don't have that distraction and that disconnection of switching tenants just to work with a partner, right? That's ridiculous. So that's what this is all about. It's about staying in context, not giving out more permissions than you need to for an entire team. It's about quickly being able to talk to a partner and sharing with partners, because that's what this is all about. It's about teamwork and collaboration and not being distracted and productivity, right? So that's why that's so important. The current way of doing things is very, very difficult and slow, and sometimes it even breaks when you try, especially if you do it from the desktop client. So the only way to do it well today, if I say well, is to do it with the web version of Teams if you are working with external partners. But in the future, that's what this is going to solve. So you're going to stay right in your own tenant. You're going to see that You've got folks that are a part of that one specific channel, and that's all they have access to, and you can be sharing documents just like they're in your own tenant and communicating with them just like they're in your own tenant. So that's what it's all about, seamless integration. You talked about it, mesh. I just think that's the coolest thing, and it's nothing new either. I mean, Second Life's been around since 2003. For those of you who remember Second Life, they had a lot of potential back then. Actually, believe it or not, Second Life is still available today. I didn't realize this until last night, but the whole idea of social, socially working with presence and for business, and this is nothing new, right? Our kids currently are doing, first-person multiplayer games in mixed reality or in virtual reality today. This isn't that hard to think that this is the future of conferencing. And like you said, Bob, it's Microsoft is thinking 5 steps, not just how to beat Slack and Zoom. I mean, there's no comparison, right? Moving forward, this is all about working together. And I've seen demos already in Dynamics with couple different vendors for field services, right? So that's a perfect use case for this, helping people in field services work on products, even though you're not in that same location. So I think they're still looking for use cases, but there's plenty of them. And I definitely don't think it's a far stretch. It may not be in the next year or two. HoloLens 2, if you have them, they're pretty expensive. They're currently working today, actually, in this environment. But the idea is they're actually going to spread it across multiple endpoints. So not just HoloLens, but Oculus, smartphones, desktops. So you're going to have that AR, VR type of capability in Teams across multiple endpoints. You'll probably be able to bring in gateways, just like all conferencing capabilities, so that you'll have the people with fully immersive capabilities, plus these people who are needed to be brought in ad hoc with just voice maybe, right? So I think, if this is the future of conferencing, I don't think it's a far stretch. It's just going to take a little bit of time.
Awesome. All right. Well, let's kick off, the second section here on the Azure Dev and Data stuff.
And we got Scott Dowling.
Hey, Scott.
And Scott was searching for the mute button. Thank you so much, guys. Appreciate it. So this year's Ignite wasn't very heavy in terms of the Azure IaaS and PaaS, core areas, as it is so much on data and dev. But there are some important updates that I pulled out that I'd like to share with the group here. One of the most interesting updates for me is around Azure Backup. So there's Backup Center, which is now generally available, which gives you a centralized backup management, basically a single pane of glass for all of your Azure VMs, your SQL, in Azure virtual machines, HANA in Azure VMs, Azure files, etc. Additional backup support is in preview for Azure Disks, Azure Blobs, and Azure Databases as well. So keep that in mind. There's also 2 areas of updates around mission critical capabilities within your Azure tenant. The first is around mission critical compute, and there's 2 key areas around this. On-demand capacity reservations for Azure virtual machines will be available in preview in April next month. On-demand capacity reservations for virtual machines essentially enable you to access your VMs in advance with SLA guarantees tied to them. This is particularly important around to organizations that want to ensure high levels of availability when you're running your tier 1 or your business critical applications in Azure. The second one within compute is around Azure Virtual Machine scale set flexibility orchestration mode, which is now available in preview. And remember, anything that's available in preview is available for free. So it's the time to really play around with things like this, in my opinion. But just so we level set, Azure Virtual Machine scale sets essentially help you to simplify your deployment, management, and scalability of your applications running on underlying virtual machines that are yours, increasing your high availability for the underlying or the application running on the underlying virtual machines. The key component here within the scale sets is you can now change the VM sizes without redeploying the scale set in whole, which is going to result in greater operational agility for the application. You're also going to be able to mix spot virtual machines and pay-as-you-go virtual machines within the same scale set to optimize your cost moving forward. The second area in the mission critical capabilities that have been updated is around storage. So there's Azure Premium solid state drives and standard solid state drives, which offer zone redundant storage to protect your data in the event that an entire zone were to fail, if you can imagine such a scenario. A key feature to provide customers with high availability for your mission critical workloads in providing not only redundancy in a single zone, but a multiple zone as well. Disks with zone recovery also provide a recovery point objective of 0 that minimizes data loss and help ensures your data recovery. The performance tiers on Azure Premium solid state drives, which provide sustained higher performance for a planned event like seasonal sales promotions or in government like voting, give you the flexibility to scale performance without increasing the disk size by selecting a higher performance tier. You can now upgrade performance tiers on premium solid state drives without any of the downtime that will avoid disruption to the underlying workloads. There's a kind of a dual update around Azure Monitor and Windows Virtual Desktop. So I'm a huge proponent of Azure Monitor. I think it's a key solution in terms of giving you a view in terms of any inconsistencies running inside of your Azure environment that could identify some malicious activity or things like that. When you think of Azure Monitor, think of like your perfmon counters within Windows Server. And applying that across your entire Azure tenant. So I think it's a really key tool. Well, Azure Monitor now plugs in with Windows Virtual Desktop. So you're going to get this unique virtual desktop infrastructure solution that improves your capabilities and views in terms of you're going to see the view of your summary of host pool status and health. You can find and troubleshoot problems within your deployment of virtual desktop through Azure Monitor. You can understand and address utilization of resources and make decisions on scaling and cost management and things of that. So it's, again, another valuable tool that's in the Azure security stack that you can now leverage against another Azure solution in Windows Virtual Desktop. When Virtual Desktop first started or was first launched, there were a lot of tools that were missing in terms of helping you maintain and monitor that environment. And like anything that Microsoft releases, you get the initial solution and they start building around all of the other great tools that are available to assist you with that solution or with that tenant, if you will. There are also some Azure Hybrid Network updates. There's multiple new services and features that'll enable your hybrid networking scenarios. Azure Route Server is now available for preview, which facilitates dynamic routing between network virtual appliances and your virtual networks. Express IPv6 support is to be released in preview later either this month or early next month. It will support both IPv4 and IPv6 based private peering and availability zones. IPv6 will enable also key IoT scenarios within your Azure tenant. It will simplify enterprises migrations or expansion to Azure, even as you run out of IPv4 addresses in your on-premise network. There's also new ExpressRoute gateway metrics, which are now available in preview. So again, light those up, check those out. We're seeing ExpressRoute, of course, more and more. It's the go-to, the golden standard for connecting your Azure tenant to your on-premise environment. These new metrics are going to enable users to monitor the count of routes learned, count of routes advertised, number of virtual machines in the virtual network, frequency of route changes, things of this nature. So just be aware that they are now available and they are in preview, i.e. free. Another great one is the scalable Bastion gateway, right? So this will also, I think it's either later this month or early next month, will be released in preview. This is going to allow users to increase the size of Bastion gateway to support as many as 500 concurrent sessions and decrease the gateway size when the usage demand goes down. Bastion will support native Azure Active Directory authentication integration for Linux VMs deployed on Azure as well. And there's just one real quick thing. As we know, Windows Server 2022 is around the corner, and nothing makes me feel older as time goes on than these new releases of Windows Server and SQL Server and seeing the date or the year attached to it anymore. But 2022 is right around the corner, and there's a whole host of things like we typically see with any of the new server releases around the advanced multi-layer security, things in the BIOS and firmware updates. But there's one that I really wanted to pull out, because I think there's two key phrases that we're going to be hearing, I think, all of next year in 2022, and primarily for me, in my personal opinion, it's going to be Azure Arc and Azure Purview. You're going to hear a little bit about Azure Purview here shortly with Miguel, but Azure Arc is another one of those tools that's been released, and not a lot of people are either aware of it, and certainly not a lot of customers are leveraging it today. But Azure Arc essentially enables customers to manage, secure, and govern your Windows Server on-premises, at the edge, or in a multi-cloud environment from a single control plane, right? A single pane of glass. And I think it's really a tool of the future. It's one of those solutions that Microsoft put out, and they're going to continue to build on it. And I think one of the key capabilities with Windows Server 22, and what we'll probably end up seeing with the future versions of SQL Server as well, is the quick integration between Windows Server and Azure Arc itself. With the new capabilities in 2022, you'll be able to take advantage of literally a one-click add this server to Azure Arc, to be part of that single pane of glass of monitoring your server environment. So I think it's going to be a key tool coming up that people are going to start hearing more and more about. So it's just another key component of, having other Microsoft technologies be able to interact and onboard very quickly and very rapidly. That's all I have, Bob. If you want to pass it off to the next slide, I believe, Miguel.
Well, thank you,
Take
Scott.
it away, Miguel. Yep.
Sure, Bob. Thank you, Scott. And Scott, thank you for going ahead and keying in on that arc. I want to echo that, and because one of the key pieces that I want to make sure we pull away from Ignite is going to be the Azure Purview. And in fact, I want to mention that we're going to be actually having a blog post as well on Purview, and I've got a couple more slides on Purview. So I'm going to talk about that in a little bit more detail in the next slide or two. But as far as the data platform, as far as we talk about the rest of the data platform, there are some significant updates. Where Scott was kind of saying it may not be that in the core infrastructure IaaS PaaS perspective. On the data platform, we are seeing some significant announcements from Ignite. First off, I'd like to mention Azure Cache for Redis. The enterprise and enterprise flash tiers are now GA, or generally available. And so for those that don't know, it's basically an open source in-memory data store that's used as a database or a cache and message broker. And so what it can do is it basically, the enterprise tiers, both of those, the enterprise and enterprise flash tiers, expand upon the capabilities that they had previously by additional features such as real-time search and time series capabilities, as well as up to 10 times larger the cache sizes, which is significant. Additionally, they can also, these tiers, the user of these tiers can actually use active geo-replication. And that allows to distribute the Redis instance across multiple regions. This also enables the creation of global caches, so I can have multi-primary writes. In other words, I can write to multiple locations. Data written in one region would automatically be applied to each other region. And this allows for us to get up to 5 nines for availability. That's for those that don't want to do that computation, that's less than 6 minutes of downtime per year. So this is significant from an Azure Cache for Redis perspective. Moving on to Cosmos DB, there's 4 updates. I think there's 2 that I really want to key in, but I'll mention all 4 of them. So the Synapse link for Azure Cosmos DB is GA, generally available, and that allows for almost near real-time analytics to be run over the NoSQL data in Azure Cosmos DB. And this is actually including MongoDB, but this is one of those things that really takes away the issue that we have, almost a barrier that we have between OLTP and OLAP by linking Cosmos to Azure Synapse Analytics. And again, for those that may not be aware, that's the new term that we have that encompasses the data analytics feature set or product set in Azure. This next piece from an Azure Cosmos DB is the Mongo version 4.0 server support. This is for the API. Really, this is going to be more for your developers because it makes it extremely easy for them to use the database for error handling with multi-document transactional support and retriable writes. Third item, which is very important if you've determined that you're going to be using Azure Cosmos DB, is a continuous backup and point in time. And so this is now currently available in preview. And as Scott pointed out so many times, that means it's free. So if you're going to be using this as something to go ahead and try and work with now, this basically allows for ongoing backups and enables customers to go ahead and recover and restore data from any point within the last 30 days. And this is significant because I can go to any point in time. If an unwanted change occurs, I can restore to that previous state as well. The last one, which is, again, we're seeing more and more of this happening on the data platform, or the role-based RBAC access for Cosmos DB, specifically with Azure Active Directory. So this integration, this is in preview, by the way, again now, this allows for the security to be handed off, if you will, to Azure AD. One of the key pieces, however, is also being able to now determine the identity used to perform database operations by retrieving that information in diagnostic logs straight out of Azure. The next point that I want to mention is the Azure Managed Instance for Apache Cassandra. For those who are not familiar, I think most people in the data platform for Azure are familiar with Azure SQL Managed Instances. This is taking it a little bit further, kind of think of it as a Cosmos DB. So this is a new semi-managed service offering. It is available currently in preview. You can run your Cassandra NoSQL data in Azure. It's basically taking away the need to actually go ahead and have VMs, et cetera. You know, previously we had to go ahead and have just a couple choices to deal with Cassandra data, either a full-scale migration to platform as a service, and that would do Azure Cosmos DB, self-managed virtual machines, where we have to handle all of the management of those machines, or on-premises infrastructure. So this does now offer an additional selection for us to go ahead and manage those workloads in Azure. Very similar to what we saw, obviously, from a SQL database to SQL Managed Instance piece, if you're familiar with that. On the data analytics side, two pieces. The Azure Synapse pathway is basically when I'm wanting to migrate from a legacy or cloud data warehouse to Azure Synapse Analytics. And again, I mentioned that previously a little bit. Think of that as the data analytics platform that Microsoft has in Azure. This basically does also kind of an automated translation of existing business logic. So keep in mind that Azure Synapse is limitless. It's an analytics service that's limitless and brings together all that data integration, the enterprise data warehousing, and real-time data insights. One of the things you can actually access, of course, or I guess several of the things you can access would be SQL Server, Tesla with Snowflake, Teradata, BigQuery, Redshift, and a bunch coming on the horizon. Last, Azure Stream Analytics. Again, now GA. This was obviously something, again, kind of in that Synapse platform, and it has been updated to provide a single tenant dedicated cluster. Previously, that was not the case. Now we actually have the ability to go ahead and have isolated environments for Stream Analytics, and that, of course, allows for the customers to go ahead and get better performance, especially during bursts in traffic. Now, I mentioned Purview at the beginning, and I wanted to take one step back and just kind of think, if you heard Scott do a very good explanation about Arc and kind of especially on the Windows Server piece, if you think of Arc as that management tool, then a single pane of glass, Purview, and it was only launched 3 months prior. So keep in mind that only 3 months ago, Purview was announced and launched, and they obviously are bringing in a whole bunch of more announcements here in Ignite. If you've not heard of Purview, it is meant to basically get a handle on all your data wherever it may reside, whether it's residing on premises, whether it's residing in Azure, whether it's residing in other clouds such as AWS, and of course, ensuring you kind of understand and have the data governance around that. It is not just a data engineer's tool. This is actually going to also be used by clients and their users of the data to be able to find that data. This is just, I wanted to kind of, so you have Azure Preview up there, data insights and where that's coming from, as well as a data catalog so that your users can go find out where to get that. At the heart of that is that data map. And what I wanted to do is, so this is kind of that overview slide. Again, this will be available to you all after the presentation. But Ken, if you move to the next slide, one of the kickers of this is it actually will pull in the information from information protection, as well as all of your governance that has already been established. So you're not having to do the net new. It brings that into Purview, and then Purview, all you do from a Purview perspective is actually specify all those sources. Now, why would this be so phenomenal? One of the things that we run across a lot with our clients is they've got either Power BI or they're using data and they don't know where that data is coming from. They don't, in fact, it may only be, well, I'm pulling it from this one source. I'm not sure where that's coming from, and that may not be authoritative. So I have the ability to take a look at the metadata of the data, pull that in, do a catalog on it, and ensure that all the governance functionality that has been defined by the organization in the cloud, whether it be Microsoft 365, whether it be Azure, whether it be AWS, is all going to be maintained. And so what I wanted to do is basically show you one screenshot on the next screenshot of a user that goes in and says, okay, I've got this Power BI workspace that has campaign analytics, but I want to know where this revenue by customer is actually coming from. So if you take a look at the breadcrumb navigation at the very top, they're actually at the home of Azure Purview, and they basically did a search for revenue. And once they actually found that, they actually clicked, okay, well, where's rev by customer being utilized? And as you can see, we can actually then go ahead and click. And again, you see this lineage going all the way back from rev by customer, which is on the top of the far right of the Power BI workspace, that's coming from a rev by customer, from a prep and transform, which is coming back from your data store in the back of multiple tables. So if you'll notice that rev by customer is kind of a function that's actually being pulled from 3 different sources: customers, retail locations, and sales invoices. You'll even notice that those icons are specifying we've got SAP, SQL Server, and even an ERP solution there as well. So imagine having the ability to go ahead and be able to know exactly where your data is coming from, being able to actually have the governance around that and defined, and being able to see that all the way through, again, with a data map. One other thing I want to point out, and I'm not going to go into that real quick, but you'll notice that we're looking at the overview, we're looking at the lineage view on this campaign analytics for this Power BI dashboard, but every single one of your tiers of that data all the way through actually has the ability to have additional metadata such as contacts. So if I want to know who is the contact for this campaign analytics Power BI workspace, I could literally go ahead and take a look at that by clicking on the contacts tab as well. I think this is one of the biggest things that we have available. I think if I would echo Scott's comments on ARC being that single pane of glass for all management, wherever your resources reside in multi-cloud environment on premises. This is basically your data single pane of glass governance tool. So it's and I like the term unified data governance across no matter where it's coming from. If I were to go into more detail on that, so understanding that within Purview, we've actually got additional capabilities that are being available as far as connections and sources that have that information available and being made available to Azure Purview. And I think that kind of wraps me up for the Purview scene. But again, be on the lookout for more information coming down the path from ourselves at Planet on Purview. I think there's a question too, if I'm not mistaken.
And I give it about 18 months before Azure Purview and Azure Arc are renamed after they outgrow the Azure label.
Yes, and I did put on this last one. This is all the Purview specific announcements that again, remember this is only 3 months old. These are the Purview specific pieces. So you're able to get into a couple things there. You got the additional sources, as I mentioned, such as ERP as SAP, Oracle database, AWS. AWS has been is now in public preview rather than private preview as it has been, and you'll see obviously all the Snaps pieces coming in as well.
So I know we're at time, but if those that can stick around for a couple minutes, I just wanted to bring it home with the roundtable at the end. We'll make it quick on this if you can stick around. If not, you can actually just wait. We'll send out the link to the follow up if you want to watch that last section. But there's a couple things that stand out, and again, I'm going to try to be quick here. First and foremost, to me, one of the big announcements I feel like is Azure Monitor for WVD. That's something. So many of our customers, a massive uptick in Windows Virtual Desktop happening in the last 6 months. I think everyone on the call from the Cloud Strategist team can agree that we're talking to all of our customers around this, and that is pushing forward. And it's some functionality that's been missing, and I think that's huge. So that's one of the things that have been in the way from having this get operationalized on a much larger scale. So that's a great update, Scott, and thank you so much for that. I guess I'll leave it with one. We don't have, again, to try to make us come in as close to on time as possible. I'll just leave you with one question on Purview, Miguel, and that is, so if I want to start now, how should I get started? What do I need to do?
So the first thing I would do is literally go ahead and jump into Azure, create a Purview. And if you'd like, you can connect it to your on-premise SQL. If you already have SQL, whether it's SQL IaaS, SQL database, SQL managed instance in the cloud, go ahead and connect to those as actually sources so that you can actually start pulling that information out. One of the key pieces, and I want to stress this, is do not rework what you already have. If you already have information in Azure Information Protection, and this is where it kind of crosses over into Microsoft 365, whether it's it doesn't, again, most people think of data and they only think of the relational data. This, of course, is not limited to relational data. This can be documents, etc., that all can be being mapped. So you could do file shares, SQL, Cosmos DB, data warehouses, etc. But if you've already defined the data governance rules and tags in information protection, that's already there and ready to go for you, and you can pull that in. The idea is for you to start working on creating that data catalog. So the idea is then to go ahead and create those sources, and that's the first thing. I know I didn't go in, and we'll get into that later on. That's one of the first things you do once you stand up your Purview is getting into sources, specify those sources so you can get a data catalog, and then connect it in as well. So your Power BI workspaces would then obviously know, hey, I'm going back to this data set, and this data set's coming from this data set. That's going to let you know exactly what your authoritative data sources are for anything that you're looking at. And that is one of the biggest issues that people have in enterprise data platforms today, data in their data estate. One of the things that we are constantly working with clients to get a handle on today. And it's just a super valuable tool. Imagine, again, that single pane of glass to be able to look across all my data and basically lock it down the way I need to for whatever compliance and regulations I have, whether that be internal or government regulations as well.
Awesome. And of course, you can reach out to your Planet account team if you want more info on this to speak more with Miguel or any of his peers here at Planet on the data architecture side. Take us home, Ken, real quick. Well, just real quick, go back to the last slide. I want to make sure I'll go ahead and hit it. Just want to make sure we talked about a lot here, right? And there's a lot to take in. There was probably 100 updates here in 60 minutes. So there's a lot going on. So we want to make sure, as a URA own customer, you're aware that we offer cloud strategy sessions from the Cloud Strategist team and some other folks here at Planet that will sit down and sort of help map out your priorities on, of course, any of the things we talked about today, but also the things that have been around for a while to help you understand exactly to help you understand exactly what your roadmap over the coming months will be. It's a short sort of 2 to 3 hour session to sort of map out what some of those next steps and your priorities are. So feel free, you can reach out to You Already Own It at go-planet.com, or of course your account teams, and they can talk you through what you need to do there. I will leave you with, we're running out of time, so I'm not actually going to post the survey here, but I'll leave you with the idea. You can go ahead and switch to the next slide, Ken. Leave you with the idea that that what we have coming in the next month. So we're actually going to have a customer takeover. I love this slide. That's a great look. For next month's session, we're going to have our customers take over. We've done that a couple times before and have sort of you guys leading the charge. We have a series of, I think, 3 customers that are coming and talk about how important organizational change management has been to their success of their projects. And they're going to come in and talk about why they feel it's important and what they leveraged as well. So that's a really exciting one coming forward. A final thing, we're always interested in what you guys want to hear next. So when we send out our follow-up on this one, we're going to include a link to a little survey so we can get some ideas from you for coming sessions. We have the next few mapped out, but we have some holes in the calendar, and we're interested in what you guys want to hear about, and we'd love to hear your feedback. So look for that in the follow-up to this when we send out the link to the recording and the deck and all that goodness sometime next week. So I know we're running long. I appreciate everybody sticking around. There was so much to cover. I really feel like this was a great session. I'm really proud of the team for putting all that together and getting it out, all that content in such a short period of time. But if anybody has any questions, we'll stick around for a couple of minutes. Feel free to ask them. You can always send to the You Already Own It at go-planet.com if you have any questions too shy to ask the whole group. Thanks everybody for joining. Have a fantastic day.